My sister threatens to take my mate, and I let her keep him. Born without a wolf, Serafina is the disgrace of her pack, until a drunken night leaves her pregnant and married to Kieran, the ruthless alpha who never wanted her. But their decade-long marriage was no fairy tale. For 10 years, she endured the humiliation. No Luna title, no mating mark, just cold sheets and colder stares. When her perfect sister returned, Kieran filed for divorce the same night, and her family was happy to see her marriage broken. Serafina didn't fight but left silently. However, when danger struck, shocking truths emerged. That night wasn't an accident. Thy defect is actually a rare gift. Thy you. And now every alpha, including her ex-husband, will fight to claim her. Too bad she is done being owned. Thou aid, too. Kieran's deep voice resonated through the dim room as he stepped close, his imposing shadow completely enveloping me. No one else will ever take your place in my camp, he murmured, his gaze locking onto mine with seasonal coldness. You had 10 years to claim me, Alpha. I bared my teeth in a smile. Funny how you only remember I am yours when I am walking away. The words shouldn't have hurt, not after a decade of waiting for this moment. Yet they sliced through me like silver, the pain radiating from my shattered heart to every nerve ending. I'd always known that Kieran would eventually ask for this. Especially now. Celeste. His first crush, his real love back. It didn't matter that I'd loved him since we were children, long before Celeste ever noticed him. It didn't matter that I'd given him a son. The moment she returned, I became invisible, just as I'd always been in his eyes. Celeste was the dazzling diamond, blinding everyone to the plain pebble at her feet. I knew this. So why did it still feel like my soul was being ripped in two? It is because of Celeste, isn't it? My voice was eerily calm. I already knew the answer, but some masochistic part of me needed to hear him say it, needed him to twist the sharp words deeper. Kieran's eyes flashed, the first real emotion he'd shown me in years. No, he snapped, jaw clenched. Of course not. Liar. He dragged a hand through his dark brown hair, exhaling sharply. Edward's death just reminded me life's too short to waste on a mistake. A mistake. I would have preferred the sharp words. Would have rather he screamed Celeste's name than reduce our marriage, our son, to a regret. I couldn't help but laugh out. The sound was jagged, hysterical, tearing from my throat as Kieran stared at me, like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. I laughed, because the alternative was screaming. My gaze traced the lines of this man I knew yet didn't know at all. This stranger I'd loved for 18 years who had never truly seen me. Who was more pitiable? Him or me? He loved Celeste, yet honor and a single mistake had chained him to a marriage he never wanted. What had these 10 years given us? If not for that night, if we hadn't been forced into this loveless union, would his eyes have held even a flicker of warmth for me? We were never meant to be like this. Even though I could never regret Daniel, I'd meant it that night. I'd been ready to vanish. I should have run farther, should never have stepped into that clinic, never let them know about the pregnancy. I told myself staying, enduring, was for Daniel's sake. But now, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. What kind of life had I given him, with parents whose hearts were oceans apart? While Celeste was gone, Kieran had played the part of a dutiful father. But now she was back, and the fragile facade of our marriage would shatter. I won't let my son watch his mother become a laughingstock. Fine, I said at last, the laughter dying on my lips. Kieran's brows lifted. Had he expected tears? Begging. Had he wanted to see me break? Too bad. My entire life, people had hungered for my surrender. But I refused to give them another ounce of my pain. When I walked away from this marriage, I would take only two things: my dignity and my son. I want full custody of Daniel. His shock morphed into fury. The hell you will. He is my son. And mine. I snarled back. You can't take the pack's air from his alpha. Kieran's voice shook with barely leashed rage. And you can't take a mother's heart from her chest. My hands trembled, but my voice didn't waver. I don't want your money, your property, anything. Just my son. Daniel was my only light in this wretched world. If Kieran took him from me, I wouldn't survive it. And most importantly, you and Celeste will have new children. The words stole the breath from my lungs. Just the thought of it, of her giving him the pups I never could, made my chest ache like a fresh wound. But for Daniel, I would endure anything. Even this. I watched Kieran closely, his expression unreadable in the dim kitchen light. Finally, he gave a single stiff nod. Fine, you can have full custody. The catch. He agreed so easily, not a single denial, not one word to contradict what I'd said about him and Celeste. He still preferred a family with her, didn't he? And the most pathetic part. Some foolish, desperate corner of my heart had still hoped, still waited for him to say something, and anything, to prove our marriage hadn't been just a prison sentence to him. I pressed my palms to my stinging eyes. Gods, what was wrong with me? I couldn't afford to hope anymore. Not tonight. If I didn't leave here soon, I'd collapse right here on the cold tiles. Then Kieran stepped into my path, a rare shadow of hesitation crossing his face as he spoke, his voice losing its usual cold edge. We can wait until after the funeral to finalize everything if you prefer. For one fleeting moment, I almost believed him. But I closed my heart, stepping back to maintain my distance. The one thing he'd refused when we married. That, and loving me, your wolf never came. He'd said that night we got married, his voice carefully blank, a mating bond would only cause you pain when we inevitably divorced. He hadn't finished the sentence, but we both knew. Just like we both knew the real reason the mark belonged to Celeste in his mind. Always had. The bitter truth settled in my chest. He'd planned for this ending from the very beginning. What difference did it make now, whether it was pity or premeditation? The result was the same. My neck remained unmarked. My heart remained broken, and Kieran would walk away free. Kieran's brow furrowed deeper. Serafina, there is no need for bitterness. Our marriage was a mistake. I only hope we can both move on. His voice softened, that hint of pity making my stomach churn. You deserve. Oh, spare me. I turned away before he could see how his pity cut me deeper than his anger ever could. Don't worry, I've saved enough to support myself and Daniel. You'll be free by tomorrow. The shock on his face was almost comical. Had he truly expected me to fight for him? To beg. Yes, I loved him. I still do. But 10 years of trying to thaw his heart had taught me this. No amount of warmth could melt a glacier that didn't want to be moved. And now that Celeste was back, did he think I'd delude myself into believing I ever stood a chance? Why crush what is left of my pride just to feed an alpha's ego? I'd learned my lesson. A decade in this loveless marriage had been enough. I was done fighting for people who never wanted me. My steps were numb as I climbed the stairs, memories of Kieran flashing like ghosts behind my eyes. The bright smile he'd given me when we first met as children, me watching from the shadows, when he won his first hunt, the way my heart shattered as he placed the victory garland on Celeste's head. her lips meeting his in a sweet kiss. The blur of liquor glasses, when their engagement was announced. That catastrophic night that started it all. Then Daniel's birth, his first steps, every milestone. Since, halfway up the staircase, Daniel's sleepy voice echoed in my mind. You and Dad will always be here, right? My heart lurched. Gods, how do we tell him? I whirled around, my earlier resolve cracking. How do we explain this to Daniel? Kieran paused mid-sip of water. I'll handle it. Of course, he has already planned for this, too. My fists clenched. And you needn't worry about finances, he added stiffly. Daniel is still my son. I'll cover his expenses and yours. I couldn't read his expression. After 10 years, the view I knew best was still his poker face. But this time, I refused to waste energy deciphering him. Tomorrow, once the papers were signed, we'd be strangers. As he wished, I turned. Without answering, the bedroom door clicked shut behind me. Then, the dam broke. Silent sobs racked my body as I slid to the floor. The day's grief finally overwhelming me. Somewhere downstairs the floorboards creaked. Kieran was probably already packing. Probably already picturing Celeste in this house. Raising my son. My hand flew to my unmarked throat, where his teeth should have been. Where a mating bond should have sealed us together. It is okay, Sarah, I whispered into the hollow dark, arms wrapped tight around my shaking ribs. You'll survive this. For my son, I'll survive anything. I returned from the lawyer's office, feeling like my soul had been put through a shredder. Walking through the front door gave me a strange kind of anxiety. Maybe it was because I knew this was one of the last times I would be here again. I let my gaze roam the foyer, taking in every detail: Daniel's baby picture on the mantel, the portrait taken of Kieran when he was ordained alpha, the picture of Daniel and me on his 5th birthday. There were no pictures of Kieran and me. Shocker, I headed straight for Kieran's study. I had left early that morning, desperate to avoid him, to spare myself a repeat of last night's devastation. I'd also been avoiding Daniel, I think. How could I look into those innocent eyes and explain that his family was breaking apart? My hand paused mid-knock when I saw Daniel sitting in a chair in front of Kieran's desk like a visitor. Of course. Alpha Kieran, ever efficient. Last night he'd said he would explain our divorce to Daniel himself, and he'd wasted no time. Daniel looked up from his seat, his eyes wise beyond his years as he held a small protective charm in his hands. Mom, he said softly, his voice steady but filled with deep care, I know you and Dad are taking different paths now. But you still have me, and we will protect each other. The warmth in his words healed a piece of my broken heart, reminding me that no matter what changes came, our bond remained unbroken. Yet another part of me, a colder, more logical part, whispered a painful truth. Was it better to let him live a lie? To grow up in a home where his parents felt nothing but emptiness for each other? And what happens when Celeste inevitably walks back into Kieran's life? How would I explain that then? Daniel. My voice cracked before I could form a complete sentence. All the resolve I'd built on the drive home crumbled to dust. Then, Kieran spoke. His tone was calm, infuriatingly final. Daniel, this is a decision between adults. So I just get told, is that it? Daniel's small hands clenched into fists on his knees. Grandpa Edward is barely gone, and now you're doing this? Did anyone think about me? The raw anger in his voice was a physical blow to my chest. But Kieran remained unmoved, his alpha aura subtly thickening the air. Son. Sometimes things just happen. Learning to accept difficult realities is part of becoming strong. It's a necessary lesson for a future alpha. It was the voice of the alpha, not just the father. And for the first time, Daniel didn't submit. He swiped angrily at his eyes, shoved himself out of the chair, and glared at both of us. Fine, do whatever you want. He bolted from the room before I could stop him. I reached out, a desperate attempt to pull him into an embrace, to soothe the hurt, but he dodged my touch with a furious shake of his head. The rejection was a fresh wound, deeper than any Kieran had ever inflicted. Kieran's eyes flicked toward the hallway. "Gavin," he called, his voice low. His loyal beta appeared instantly at the door. "Ensure Daniel doesn't leave the grounds. Give him space, but watch him." Gavin nodded silently and disappeared. Kieran then turned his focus back to me, the stern alpha mask still firmly in place, though a flicker of something else, impatience, weariness, haunted his dark eyes. "So much for explaining it to him gently," I said, my voice thick with accusation I could no longer contain. "He'll understand," Kieran replied, his voice cool. "He just needs time to process it." His gaze dropped, landing on the legal folder I was clutching so tightly my knuckles had turned white. A faint, unreadable emotion passed over his handsome, usually impassive face. "I assume those are the papers." I nodded, suddenly feeling nervous. My lawyer drafted the agreement, stating the custody terms. I moved forward and placed the document on the desk. Everything's clearly outlined: visitation schedules, holidays, education decisions. Kieran opened the folder and pulled out the documents. His eyebrows furrowed in concentration as his eyes darted over the pages. I also met with a realtor she suggested." I continued, clasping my hands before me. "She showed me a lovely house about 30 minutes from here. It is fully furnished, ready to move in, and the mortgage is very reasonable. It is in neutral territory, so you can visit any Where is the fire?" I paused, frowning at Kieran. "What? I am the one who asked for a divorce." He dropped the papers on the desk with a scoff. "Yet here you are with moving plans and legal documents before the ink's even dry. Were you counting down the days?" The truth burned my tongue. Yes. Every single one of the 3,600 days we'd been married, but admitting it would only give him more ammunition. I had just seen how Kieran handled Daniel's pain. My son's raw, betrayed face flashed before my eyes. I couldn't risk him being raised under Kieran's cold alpha lessons, or worse, under Celeste's future influence. Full custody was my only sanctuary. Kieran sneered at my silence, leaning back in his chair. "Leave the address for your new house," he said, the word dripping with disdain. "I'll be tied up today. My son and I will have dinner. Then I'll send him your way, along with your signed copy of the papers." The finality in his voice extinguished my hope of one last family meal. Of course, the great Alpha Kieran wouldn't deign to break bread with his soon-to-be ex-wife. I left Kieran's office, the hole in my chest yawning further. I hadn't been able to sleep last night after the news, so I'd used that time to pack all my belongings. I'd never been given a proper chance to make this place my home. So everything I owned fit into 2 suitcases. After loading my car with it, instead of driving away, I just sat in the driver's seat. I stared up at the house before me, recalling all my memories. The ones I'd made with Daniel were bright and colorful, filled with love and laughter. But the memories of Kieran were gray, dull, and empty. Every stilted conversation, every withheld touch, every smile he saved for someone else. The shrill ringtone shattered my reverie. My mother's name flashing on the screen sent ice through my veins. 2 calls in as many days after a decade of silence. The universe clearly had jokes. "Hi, Mom." I forced cheer into my voice. "How are you holding up?" She bypassed pleasantries like always. "Is it true?" My fingers tightened around the phone. "Is what true? That you are finally divorcing Kieran?" The breath left my lungs. Of course she knew. Kieran had probably called Celeste last night. Yes. I ground out between clenched teeth the sound of my mother's relieved sigh, cut deeper than any blade. Actual. God's damned relief. It is for the best, she said. The marriage was a mistake to begin with. This is the correction we've all been waiting for. My mouth fell open. A single, betrayed tear slipped free. What kind of mother celebrates her daughter's heartbreak? The answer came swiftly and bitterly. The kind who always wanted her other daughter to win. I hung up without another word and powered off my phone before she could twist the sharp words further. I don't know how long I sat there, watching the shadows lengthen across the manicured lawn until the dying sun painted the front door orange. Then Daniel emerged. He looked calmer, though his eyes were still puffy. Kieran walked out after him, shouldering a large duffel bag. I frowned. No way that was all Daniel's things. Kieran was making a point. It didn't matter that we moved. Daniel's home was still here. When Daniel saw me waiting, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face before settling into a small, tentative smile. I got out of the car. He ran to me, and I pulled him into a fierce hug. Goddess, it felt good to hold him again. I said I'd bring him over. Kieran snapped, coming closer. I am sorry. I just wanted. Is this how it is going to be? He cut me off. Your neat lines and separate territories already blurring. Do you even know what you want? Daniel's small hand tugged at Kieran's sleeve. Dad, stop. His voice was soft, but held a surprising firmness. You promised, and it's Grandpa's funeral this Saturday. We'll see you then. Kieran's jaw clenched hard enough to crack stone. For a heartbeat, I thought he might argue, but then he exhaled sharply and ruffled Daniel's hair. Yeah. See you then, champ. His gaze flicked to me cold and dismissive. Be good for your mother. He handed the duffel bag to me and went back inside without another word. I swallowed the lump in my throat and loaded the bag in silence. Daniel climbed into the passenger seat without complaint, his two wise eyes watching me carefully. As I pulled away, I forced myself not to look back, not at the house, not at the life I'd failed to make work. 2 minutes into the drive, Daniel rummaged through his backpack and produced a slightly squashed sandwich. You didn't eat dinner, he said simply, pressing it into my hand. The tears I'd been trying so hard to hold spilled out. Daniel. My voice cracked. Do you hate me for this? For taking you away from your dad? He considered it, with a solemnity no 9-year-old should possess. My heart stalled, braced for the blow. Number. He fiddled with his seatbelt. I know you were sad a lot. Maybe now you can be happy. A sob tore free. The road blurred. His small hand slipped into mine, squeezing tight. Don't cry, Mom. His whisper was fierce with promise. You've got me. I'll make you happy. I brought his knuckles to my lips, tasting salt and hope. So what if Kieran never loved me? This remarkable boy did wholeheartedly, unconditionally, and in that moment, it was enough. More than enough. Another sleepless night. The irony wasn't lost on me. I hadn't shared a bed with Kieran in years. Yet the unfamiliar silence of this new house felt louder than any absence. Every time I closed my eyes, the ghosts of what might have been danced behind my lids. 3 times I'd crept down the hall to check on Daniel, only to find him curled peacefully under his Star Wars comforter, his breathing deep and even. Thank the moon for small mercies. This modest house might lack the imposing security of the Alpha Manor, but I'd fill every inch with enough love to compensate. When Dawn's pale fingers finally pried through my blackout curtains, a lead weight settled in my stomach. Today, we'd bury my father. I dressed slowly, each movement weighted with dread. It wasn't grief that paralyzed me. Our relationship had vanished long before his heart stopped beating. No, it was the prospect of facing my family's judgmental stares, of standing across a coffin from Kieran while our divorce papers gathered fresh ink. Ex-husband. The term scraped against my raw nerves. Daniel's door creaked as I pushed it open. My breath caught. There he sat, already dressed in the miniature black suit we'd picked out together, his small fingers deftly maneuvering his Nintendo Switch. "Morning, Mom." He flashed me a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Tears pricked my lashes. Where had my baby gone? The boy staring back at me wore Kieran's strong jawline, his piercing gaze. A living reminder of everything I'd lost, and everything I'd gained. "Look at you," I whispered, smoothing his lapel, "all grown up." Sadness shadowed his face, but he steeled himself and put the video game console aside. "Let's go," he whispered, shoulders squaring with forced bravery. But when the old stone church loomed into view, Daniel's courage faltered. His knuckles whitened around the car door handle. "Hey." I cupped his tense shoulder. "Talk to me." When he turned, the unshed tears in his eyes shattered me. We didn't get to say goodbye. Does that mean Grandpa doesn't know we loved him? The question hit like a cold stares between my ribs. While my father's absence had become my normal, Daniel had lost his favorite storytelling partner, his secret cookie supplier. I pressed my palm over his thundering heart. "Grandpa's right here, my love." My voice cracked. "And here." I tapped his temple gently. "As long as we remember him, he is never really gone." Daniel exhaled shockily, some of the tension leaving his small frame. "Okay, ready?" His nod was all the strength I needed. Together, we stepped out of the car. The church doors swallowed us into a sea of mourners, pack members in their finest black, allies from neighboring territories, and a scattering of human associates who'd done business with my father. The air hummed with whispered condolences and the cloying scent of lilies. My family sat like royalty in the front pew. My mother's head rested against Ethan's shoulder, while Celeste, God's. Even in grief, my sister looked like she'd stepped from a magazine spread. Sunlight through stained glass windows gilded her perfect blonde waves, her designer dress clinging to curves that had always made my own frame feel boyish in comparison. "Daniel, darling." My mother's arms opened wide as we approached, not for me, never for me, but for the grandson who carried the Blackthorn name, the grandson who mattered. I watched numbly as Daniel was enfolded in her embrace, his small frame disappearing against her black lace. That left only one vacant seat, sandwiched between Celeste and the end of the pew. My sister's glacial blue eyes raked over me. A decade apart, yet her hatred hadn't dimmed. She inched away as I sat, the silk of her dress whispering against the pew like a snake's warning, trying to force my thoughts away from the family who didn't want me. I let my gaze wander round the hall, and land on another family that didn't want me. The Blackthorns occupied the opposite side of the aisle, Kieran's broad shoulders cutting an imposing silhouette beside his parents. Leona Blackthorn's lips pursed when she noticed me looking. Like my family rejected me, the Blackthorns refused to accept me. To them, I was Kieran's legal wife, not his Luna. His mother, Leona, still held the title of Luna even after the alpha title was passed to Kieran. Now, she regarded me icily. I am sure she was ecstatic over the divorce news. The stain on her family was finally gone. A small, warm hand slipped into mine. Daniel had extricated himself from my mother's clutches and now formed a living barrier between me and Celeste. His fingers squeezed mine. A silent, "I am here." I squeezed back, drawing strength from this remarkable child who shouldn't have needed to be the brave one. The organ's mournful chords signaled the service's start. Just a few more hours, I could hold myself together that long. Couldn't I? Dat. Font. The day had been a blur of somber rituals and stifling formalities. After ensuring Daniel was settled with his grandparents for the evening, I'd rushed to the post-funeral gathering. A celebration of life reception at the Lockwood Hotel. Stepping into the grand hall was like entering another world. The heavy silence of the day had been replaced by the low hum of conversation and the clink of crystal. Laughter, albeit subdued, punctuated the air. The shift was disorienting. I hadn't attended a function like this in a decade. 10 years ago, I was merely Celeste's shadow. In the 10 years since, Kieran had never taken me to a single public PAC event. Familiar faces swam in the crowd, but they were outnumbered by strangers. I had never been part of the inner social circles of either the Lockwoods or the Blackthorns. I kept to the edges, a ghost in my own father's house, trying to navigate towards the family section. Across the room, Celeste stood, radiant in a slate-gray gown that complemented Kieran's dark suit perfectly. Her hand was tucked possessively in the crook of his arm, her head tilted towards his shoulder in a gesture of intimate familiarity, as if she were his rightful Luna. My mother stood nearby, beaming as she spoke to an elderly alpha from a neighboring pack, undoubtedly introducing them as her proud daughter and future son-in-law. The irony was a live wire against my frayed nerves, but I knew I had forfeited any right to object. If I'd ever had one, see, that's how it was always meant to be. The voice, sharp with malice, came from my side. Abby, Celeste's friend from our youth, appeared like a viper. Her smile was all teeth. You stole what was hers. If not for you, this scene would have been at their wedding a decade ago, not a funeral. Don't get any ideas about crawling back. I'll be watching you for her. Her words were poison-tipped darts. But my pride, brittle as it was, wouldn't let me crumble. I am here for my father, not for anyone else. Playing the devoted daughter now. Abby gave a tinkling, humorless laugh. If you were any kind of daughter, you wouldn't have driven your own sister away for 10 years. She missed her chance to say goodbye because of you. It was a direct hit, twisting the sharp words of guilt that had been buried in my heart since the hospital. I knew with a certainty that hollowed me out, that the daughter my father had truly wanted at his bedside wasn't me. Some people should know their place and slink back to their little rental. Abby hissed, leaning in. I opened my mouth to retort, but she subtly, deliberately shifted her weight and shoved her hip against mine. The motion was disguised but effective. I stumbled backward, my heel catching on the rug, and collided with a serving table laden with champagne flutes. Time slowed. The crash of glass was deafening in the conversational lull. Shards glittered like cruel diamonds on the marble floor, champagne pooling around my ruined shoes. A wave of horrified silence washed over the section of the room, followed by a crescendo of whispers. Serafina! My mother's voice cut through the noise, sharp with a disgust that stung more than the broken glass. Ethan was at her side, his eyes blazing with suppressed fury. Must you always create a spectacle, even today? My gaze, humiliated and desperate, flew across the room to Kieran. His brow was furrowed, a muscle ticking in his jaw. But before he could speak or move, Celeste was already gliding forward. A vision of concerned grace amidst the chaos. She reached me, her expression a masterpiece of sympathetic distress. "Oh, Sarah, you're soaked. Let me help you." She raised her voice slightly, a gentle command to the onlookers. "It is just a little accident, nothing to see. Please enjoy the evening." Then, her hand closed around my wrist with surprising firmness. "I'll take her to get cleaned up." I had to admire Celeste. Her timing was always impeccable. She steered me away from the staring crowd, down a familiar hallway to a small, opulent sitting room, often used for private conversations. The moment the door clicked shut behind us, the compassionate mask melted away. The serene concern vanished from her face, replaced by a cold, glacial calm. She released my wrist as if it were contaminated. "Still making a mess of everything I see," she said, her voice soft but devoid of all warmth. "Well, this does simplify things. The cloying scent of her jasmine perfume enveloped me as she closed the distance. 10 years, sister, she hissed. 10 years you played house with my life, but I am reclaiming what is mine, my family, my position. Her breath warmed my ear, my Kieran. And this time, you're going to lose everything. If this weren't my father's memorial, I might have laughed. The absurdity Celeste had always owned them all. Their love, their loyalty, Kieran's heart known of it, had ever truly been mine to lose. I met her icy gaze, keeping my voice as steady as I could, refusing to let the bitterness seep through. It seems you haven't changed either, Celeste. The one who got everything, yet somehow, always the victim. A flicker of raw anger, primal and satisfying, flashed across her perfect features. Bullseye. It took me a decade to accept my part in what happened, but you weren't innocent, Celeste. I offered to run, to do anything to stop the wedding, to leave Kieran for you. I even begged you, but you did nothing. You're lying, she snapped, but the denial came too quickly, the faint flush creeping up her neck betraying her. The old wound still festered. You threatened me. You wanted to make me look like the villain. I let out a short, humorless laugh, taking a step closer. Is that what it was? Your perfect image came first, so you ran across an ocean rather than fight for the great love you supposedly shared? Her breath hitched, thrown by the direct hit. For a long moment she just stared. Then she took a deep breath, her expression settling into one of cold, triumphant pity. You've gotten better at twisting the truth in 10 years. I had to leave because I was heartbroken. And, most importantly, because everyone chose to believe my heartbreak over your circumstances. The air left my lungs in a quiet rush. A slow, cruel smile curved her lips. But I can understand. How else could you have made yourself feel better about these 10 years, if not by telling yourself a few lies? My fists clenched at my sides, the urge to wipe that smug look off her face almost overwhelming. Admit it, Sarah. You weren't enough. I heard Father cut off your funds. Mother and Ethan froze you out. But you know what? Even from overseas, I never lost my place. Every major holiday, they flew to see me. See. I gave you 10 years, Sarah, and you still couldn't earn their love. If anything, they love me more. My heart twisted. The old abandonment wound ripped wide open anew, and my own sister reveled in it. And Kieran, he kept sending Christmas gifts every single year. Even when I never wrote back, he never missed one. Did you really think you could ever win against that? I fought to keep the tears from showing, to keep my voice from trembling. I don't care anymore, Celeste. Kieran and I are divorced. I won't give you another chance to stand on my dignity. Let's hope our paths don't cross again. I didn't wait for a response. I turned, pulled the door open, and strode back down the hallway, past the murmuring guests, out of the grand hall that had never been my home, away from the people who had never been my family. The weight of their stares was a physical pressure on my back. But I refused to look back. I never should have come. All I wanted now was my son. To collect Daniel from his grandparents, go back to our little house, and start building the quiet, honest life we deserved. But the tears I'd held back all day finally broke free the moment I was alone in the car. They weren't gentle. They were a torrent, blurring the stately drive of the Lockwood Hotel into a watery smear of green and gray. Sobs shook my shoulders, making it hard to breathe, hard to see. I was crying for the father I'd never truly had, for the mother who despised me, for the love that had always been a lie. I was driving too fast for the winding, tree-lined road, blinded by grief and rage and a desperate need to escape. The headlights cut a shaky path through the deepening twilight. That's why I didn't see it until it was too late. One moment, the road was empty. The next, a massive dark shape erupted from the dense undergrowth to my right. It wasn't a deer. It moved on 2 legs, then 4, a terrifying, loping gait that covered the distance in a heartbeat. A rogue. Waking in the hospital, the memory of the intrusion clung to me like a second skin, the metallic taste of fear, the crushing pressure of imminent death. I'd been on the quiet back road between the Lockwood estate and Nightfang territory, heading to pick up Daniel. Luck, it seemed, had finally run out for good. Though I knew the route, I'd somehow missed a turn, the signposts blurring into a meaningless smear through my tear-blurred vision. On Packlands, 911 was useless against a rogue. My fingers slick with panic fumbled for my phone. The stark, lonely truth hit me then. In a life of practiced invisibility, I had no one to call, no friends, no packlink to send a mental cry for help. My family's numbers blocked, the final, silent testament to a decade of being erased. Then, my car, as if sharing my despair, choked and vanished, leaving me a perfect, helpless target in a metal coffin. The rogue's approach was a slow, predatory stalk. The shattering of the driver's side window wasn't just a sound, it was an explosion of violence. Glass rained down in jagged, glittering shards. A massive, furred arm swiped inward. White-hot agony seared across my forearm. My scream was raw, a desperate, solitary sound swallowed by the night. And then, he appeared, a black wolf of such immense size and power I'd never seen its like. He moved like a shadow given form and fury, slamming into the rogue with enough force to send both beasts tumbling away from the car. The fight was brutal, primal, and shockingly brief. The black wolf was a master of lethal efficiency. With a final, decisive twist, he ended it, my vision. Already graying at the edges from warmth, draining away loss and shock, caught a glimpse of him shifting back to human form. A tall, powerfully built silhouette outlined against the car lights before darkness swallowed me whole. Now, the sterile brightness of the hospital room was a jarring contrast. A nurse adjusting my IV noticed my fluttering eyelids. "Oh, look who's decided to join us. Our Cinderella is awake," she chirped brightly. I blinked. Disoriented Cinderella. Another younger nurse leaned in, her eyes wide with gossipy excitement. "You had quite the night in shining armor. Or, well, shining fur, I suppose. A gorgeous alpha came to your rescue. Took down that rogue all by himself. He's new in town, I hear," the first nurse added, checking my vitals. "Been making a name for himself this past month, helped a few omegas in tricky situations. But this was different," the second nurse whispered conspiratorially. "I was on duty when he carried you in, cradled you like you were made of glass. I've never seen an alpha look so intense, so worried. It wasn't just a rescue. It felt personal. My mind struggled to process this. A mysterious alpha. Did he leave a name? Who is he?" Both nurses shrugged in unison. "That's the thing," the first one said. "He never does. Pays any bills up front, in cash, and disappears. A true mystery hero." Before I could press further, the door swung open with a soft whoosh. An older, stern-faced head nurse stood in the doorway, her presence instantly silencing the younger women. Her sharp eyes landed on me. "Serafina Blackthorne," she stated, her voice devoid of the earlier chatter's warmth. It was a cool, professional acknowledgement. "Your family is here. Now that you're awake, they can see you. Family." The word sent a fresh jolt of anxiety through the pain medication fog. Which family, the one that had just watched me flee their gathering in disgrace? Or the one that had wished me gone for a decade? Or the one that always absent when I really need them? The head nurse stepped aside, holding the door open. And I knew it was time to cut all this. How be, Shu, Kieran's point of view. I can't describe the cold, sharp jolt that went through me when the hospital called Serafina. Intrusion. On the road back from the Lockwood Hotel, the very road she'd taken to collect Daniel from my parents. The memory of her humiliation at the reception was still fresh. When her desperate, wounded eyes had found mine across the room, something primal had stirred, a flicker of protective instinct I'd long thought dead. She was, after all, the mother of my son. She had been my wife, but intervening would have thrown gasoline on the gossip. It would have confused everything, especially with Celeste, standing beside me, gracious and perfect, the woman I was meant to be with. I owed it to Celeste, to our future, to not create another scandal. So I'd stayed rooted, letting Celeste play the peacemaker. Her poised handling of the situation had only deepened my admiration. By the time the reception wound down in the early hours, my focus was solely on Celeste, on the fragile new beginning we were forging. Then the phone shattered that illusion. The news sent a shockwave through both families. Margaret and Ethan arrived at the hospital shortly after I did, their faces etched with a worry that seemed genuine. When the nurse mentioned the severity of the intrusion, the words nearly bled out. Hanging in the sterile air, Margaret broke down in quiet, shuddering sobs. Freshly widowed, she couldn't bear the thought of losing a daughter, even the one she'd kept at arm's length. The sight twisted something unexpected in my chest. How is she? My mother's voice on the phone dragged me back to the present. Daniel wants to know. I stared at the closed door of the treatment room, a strange, churning sensation in my gut. How is she? I didn't know. I'd heard she was found covered in warmth draining away. Her car wrecked, but I wasn't the hero who'd saved her. I hadn't even been the one to bring her here. I was just the useless ex-husband, waiting in the hall for news that wasn't mine to demand. There's no update yet. They haven't told us anything. The door opened, and Serafina walked out. Her right hand was in a sling, bandages poking out from under the rolled-up sleeve of the shirt. Because she didn't have a wolf, she wouldn't be able to speedily heal like werewolves did. The thought of her having to nurse the pain and deal with injury like a mundane task gave me an uncomfortable, gnawing feeling. Her head was turned inward, smiling at whoever was in the room, a doctor or nurse. Thank you, I will. Yep. Then she turned, and our eyes met. My wolf stirred at the sight. I'd always thought Serafina had beautiful eyes, flecks of green swirling in blue, like fish in a cerulean sea. For 10 long years I had deliberately avoided looking into them too deeply, refused to acknowledge the devotion that once shimmered in their depths. I told myself I couldn't forget she was the woman who'd ruined my life, couldn't surrender again to that dangerous allure and betray my love for Celeste. But now, seeing those same eyes regard me with nothing but glacial indifference, my heart clenched, her smile fell. It was like that sea had frozen over, and there was nothing, not even anger for failing to protect her, just icy regard. Serafina! The moment Margaret saw her, she leapt up, rushing forward. Serafina turned, a slight frown creasing her brow, as her mother reached for her injured arm. Oh, darling, look at you! Margaret's voice trembled. Excuse me. Sarah took a precise step back, leaving her mother's hand hovering in empty air. I think you have the wrong daughter. If you're looking for your precious, her gaze cut past Margaret to where Ethan and Celeste stood. She's right behind you. Sarah! Ethan interjected, his alpha tone heavy with disapproval. You nearly vanished. We were worried. Oh, when did my life or death become of any consequence to you? Her voice was a chilling monotone. You blocked my number. You erased me. Did you ever stop to wonder why a stranger in the woods was my only hope, and not my precious family who were mere miles away? Her words froze Ethan where he stood. His jaw tightened to stone, words trapped behind clenched teeth. As someone who'd known him for years, I recognized the turmoil churning beneath the surface. Ethan had never been close to Sarah, not in the way he doted on Celeste. But in the moment he realized she'd nearly vanished, because none of us were there for her, I caught the faint, raw fracture in his eyes. And Sarah, she just stood across from him, cold and still. No hysterics, no tears. Only a quiet glacial fury burned in her gaze. This wasn't the Sarah I knew. The woman who'd treasured our rare kindnesses like sunlight, who'd contorted herself for the barest shred of our approval. The doctors say I'll live, she continued, her gaze sliding dismissively over me. Then again, a cold, mirthless smile touched her lips. Relying on any of you, I probably would have vanished faster. Sarah, watch your tongue. The anger that ripped from me was instinctive. Perhaps it was the casual way she spoke of her own death. Perhaps it was the unfamiliar steel in her posture, the rebellion flashing in eyes that now held a depth of emotion I was afraid to name. Do you ever think of Daniel when you say things like that? I bit out. A flicker of guilt crossed her face, so swift I might have imagined it. For a heartbeat, the old pliant Serafina was there. Then it was gone. I'm going to get him now, she said, turning toward the exit without a second glance. I'll drive you. My hand shot out, catching her uninjured wrist. Her eyes dropped to my fingers circling her arm, her brow tightening. I released her but blocked her path. Your car is wrecked. It's not safe for you to be alone right now. Yes, Sarah. Margaret chimed in, her worry morphing into practicality. And you're injured. It's hardly the time to be caring for a child. Perhaps it's better if, is this your new ploy? To take Daniel from me. What? The accusation was so absurd it stole my breath. It was a random intrusion. Nothing more. The only reason to make such a fuss, she said, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper, is if you have an ulterior motive. Sarah, what are you talking about? Margaret gasped. I've given you what you wanted. She shrugged, a gesture of feigned nonchalance that was more devastating than any shout. The divorce is signed. I've moved out. The funeral is over. I said I hoped we wouldn't meet again. My jaw ached from clenching. Sarah, that's not. Try to take Daniel from me, she said, her eyes locking onto mine with a ferocity that was utterly alien, a promise of pure, undiluted violence, and you'll find out how sharp my teeth are, with or without a wolf. Without another moment's hesitation, she walked out. It felt like a silver bullet to the chest. Serafina was a viper. Her distance should have been a relief. So why did the line she'd just drawn between us make me want to tear the whole damn world apart? Celeste's touch on my arm made me jerk. Kieran, are you all right? Her fingers trembled against my sleeve. With father gone. I don't feel safe. I need you. I forced my focus back to her. The woman I'd loved for years, my rightful Luna to be. I'm here, I murmured, pulling her closer. No one is going to separate us again. Celeste buried her face deeper into my chest, her tears dampening my shirt. Yet my traitorous gaze kept drifting to the empty doorway where Serafina had vanished. A restless, churning agitation took root deep in my gut. Why? The silver lining of never having been truly valued by the Blackthorns was the absence of tedious pleasantries. Luna Leona's eyes narrowed at my brisk greeting, her posture stiff with disapproval. The meek, eager-to-please daughter-in-law was gone, shed with the wedding ring. Alpha Christian's gaze lingered on the stark white sling cradling my arm. That looks significant, Serafina, he said, his voice a low rumble. Perhaps given the circumstances, it would be prudent for Daniel to remain here tonight. Ensure he's not exposed to any undue stress. It was a veiled challenge. Wrapped in the guise of concern, my spine straightened. Before I could form a restepsal, a small, firm voice cut through the tension. I'm going home with Mom. Daniel stood beside me. His jaw set in a stubborn line that was pure Kieran, but his eyes fixed on mine were all unwavering loyalty. He'd packed his own bag, which sat by his feet like a declaration. Christian's brows lifted, a flicker of surprise crossing his features. Leona opened her mouth, likely to argue, but seemed to think better of it. The legal documents were signed. My custody was ironclad, and my son had just drawn his own line in the sand. This was the true power of full custody. But more precious than any legal right was the fierce, unshakable ally standing beside me. In the back of the Uber, Daniel was uncharacteristically quiet. He carefully arranged my injured arm on a pillow he'd insisted on bringing, his small fingers gentle as he adjusted the sling's strap. The sunshine washed over his solemn face in alternating waves of gold and shadow. "I should have been with you yesterday," he murmured, his voice thick. "I could have, I dunno, thrown a rock or something." The lump in my throat was instant. My brave boy already thinking like a protector. "No, my love," I said softly, pulling him close with my good arm. His small body was tense. "I am so grateful you were safe with your grandparents." The mere thought of him in that car, of those amber eyes and claws turned toward him, sent a fresh wave of icy terror through my veins. If anything had happened to him, I would have shattered into 1,000 screaming pieces. "But you got hurt," he insisted, a tremor in his voice. "And I wasn't there." I cupped his cheek, turning his face to mine. "Look at me. The most important thing is that I'm here now, right next to you. And I am safe. We both are." I infused my voice with a conviction I desperately needed to feel. "I promise you, nothing like that will happen again." His big, earnest eyes searched mine, then put his small fist in the air. "For real." A genuine smile, the first since before the funeral, touched my lips. I balled my hands to punch his lightly, sealing the pact, for real. The tension finally drained from his shoulders. A real smile broke through on his face. "Okay, Mom." He settled back against the seat, his hand finding mine and holding on tight. "Now it's my turn to take care of you." Suck, wend. Daniel had meant it when he said he'd take care of me. He held doors open, adjusted the thermostat to a perfect cozy temperature, and buzzed around creating an ideal nest for me to rest in. He even managed to warm up a bowl of mac and cheese in the microwave. It was cold in the middle, but I devoured the whole thing like it had 5 Michelin stars. He'd spent the entire morning on his mission to make me comfortable. "Are you okay, Mom?" Daniel asked, tugging the thick duvet over my shoulder as he insisted on a proper nap. "Do you need anything else?" I smiled. "Just one more thing." I pulled the duvet open, patting the space beside me. Daniel grinned and with a half-hearted eye roll climbed in. We hardly ever slept in the same bed anymore on account of Daniel being way too old for cuddling. As far as I was concerned, such a thing wasn't possible. As long as I was alive, he was my baby and would always be the perfect age and size for cuddling. I gingerly draped my injured arm around his waist, and he cradled it in his arms. "Does it still hurt?" I tucked his head under my chin. "Not when I am with you." There was a soft silence in which Daniel idly trailed a finger over the bandage. "Mom," he said quietly after a while, "when I grow up, when I get my wolf, I'll protect you. I promise." My throat constricted with emotion, and I closed my eyes tightly against the tears that immediately swam to the surface. My lack of a wolf was public knowledge, a flaw I'd carried like a brand. No one had ever made me a promise like this. I'd received pitying glances, scornful remarks, or most often cold indifference. I thought I'd grown accustomed to it, accepted my permanently lesser status. But hearing this vow from my child, feeling his small, earnest body curled against mine, it undid me. Behind my closed eyelids, a parade of faces flashed. My father's disappointed back when my wolf never came, my mother's sigh of resignation, Ethan's dismissive sneer, Celeste's perfectly cruel smirk, the pack's muttered curses. And Kieran's icy declaration, on our wedding night, that he wouldn't mark a mate without a wolf. I'd wasted over a decade trying to earn their approval, their love, and failed every time. I'd always believed I simply wasn't good enough. But this was a different kind of ache. It wasn't about my lack. It was about their lack of care, of empathy, of basic humanity. Real love didn't scorn your weakness. It vowed to be your shield. Like Daniel's pure, fierce love, then, unbidden, the memory of the alpha who saved me surfaced. The strength of his arms cradling me, the feel of his tattoo against my cheek. I remembered what the nurses had said. An alpha who protected the weak. He'd saved many other wolves in the intrusion, mainly omegas. That only raised more questions. Strong alphas didn't bother with the weak, especially strangers. So who was this alpha with a penchant for broken things? Whoever he is, I hope I get to thank him someday. My fingers brushed the bandages on my arm. For protecting the wolfless, defenseless little Sarah, I woke in the late afternoon to find Daniel still deeply asleep, his small frame curled tightly against me. I scoffed slightly, affectionately stroking his hair. Too old for cuddling my ass, I murmured. He was wrapped around me like a baby koala. My muscles ached, and my back stung like a shadow. Still, I dragged myself to the kitchen, grabbed a box of Hungry Jack, and began putting dinner together. I'd barely plated the first pancake when there was a knock on the door. It was unexpected. We were new here. No one should be visiting at this hour. Kieran, maybe, but I laughed softly to myself. At the ridiculous thought, when I opened the door, however, the laughter vanished in my throat. Standing before me, his broad shoulders filling the entire doorway, was a man I'd never met. What stunned me, however, was the shocking sense of familiarity I felt at the sight of him. I squinted against the early morning sun, which shone in my eyes and darkened his features. As if he noticed my discomfort, he shifted, blocking out the sun, and I could suddenly see him clearly. Jet black hair pulled into a man bun at the nape of his neck, dark blue eyes like an evening sky, a strikingly handsome face. I gasped as my eyes dropped down to his right arm to the swirling sleeve of black ink, covering it. It was he, the alpha, who saved my life. Hi, Sarah. His voice was deep and smooth, mildly amused, maybe because I was staring at him with my eyes popping out of my head. When I didn't move or say anything, he chuckled, the sound rumbling in the space between us. I see I must have caught you at a bad time. He turned to walk away, and I gasped out of my frozen state. Wait! He turned back, an eyebrow raised. It is you! His lips twitched. Lucian Reed. He stretched out the tattooed arm to me expectantly. On autopilot, I reached out with my uninjured arm and took his hand. It was large and warm and swallowed mine. Serafina Biel. No, not Blackthorn. Not anymore, not really Lockwood either. Besides, he already knew my name. Come in, please. I stepped out of the doorway and gestured into the house. Thank you, Lucian said as he crossed the threshold. He towered over me, almost as tall as Kieran, and I took an instinctive step back. Thursday, this way. I led him to the living room and gestured for him to sit in the armchair. He sat in it as if it were a throne, and something told me he could drop into a pile of mud and make it look regal. His head swiveled, taking in the living room, the flowery wallpaper, the mismatched couches, and oddly matching side tables. Your home is lovely. I couldn't tell if he was being sarcastic, but I waved the comment away. It came like this. I just moved in. As soon as I said the words, I dropped my gaze. Why was I telling this stranger my business? How are your injuries? He asked, nodding toward my bandages. My fingers brushed over the surface. They'll heal. I swallowed. Thank you. I should have said that the moment I opened the door. Thank you so much for saving my life. Lucian grinned, a full-toothed smile that made him look less intimidating. You are very welcome, Sarah. I worried my lower lip between my teeth. Can I ask, though, why were you even there? Why take such a risk for someone you don't even know? He shook his head, his smile fading into something softer. I was just passing through, and knowing someone or not, no one deserves to be hunted like that. I couldn't just stand by. He slipped a hand into his pocket and then stretched it to me. My eyes scanned the contents. Out of the shadows, I read out loud, looking up at Lucian in question. I am the alpha of the Shadowvale Pack in the south, he said, and the president of... I glanced at the card again. Out of the shadows. Lucian nodded. It is a relief organization dedicated to helping wolfless and vulnerable wolves, Omega's outcasts, rogues. He shrugged. If a wolf needs help, Otz is there. Well, that explained a lot. That is noble, impressive, awe-inspiring for someone who had spent her whole life being ridiculed and cast aside for being wolfless. It was a dizzying relief to find out that there was someone out there, a whole-ass organization, who cared that much for my kind. How did you even find my house? I asked, the words tumbling out. They said you never left a name. Lucian chuckled. The sound rich and warm. I prefer to avoid unnecessary complications. But I do like to follow up, especially when someone looks very alone. I just wanted to make sure you were truly all right. My hands clenched in my lap, a familiar ache tightening my chest. A stranger could see the isolation my own family had willfully ignored for years. Lucian leaned in, bracing his elbows on his shadow, his expression turning earnest. Forgive me if I overstep, but I did ask around, a little. I tilted my head, a frown forming. About me. You are Edward Lockwood's eldest daughter, correct? And I heard you are without a wolf. I could almost hear my mental walls slamming up. Iron gates locking. What is this? I hissed. Were you targeting me? Did you save me so you could? I saved you because you were in danger, Lucian said simply. And I am here to check up on your well-being. Do you go check on every wolf you save? Not every single one, he admitted honestly. So, why me? Because I want you to join my organization. I blinked. What? He nodded. You are an alpha's daughter, an alpha's sister, and an alpha's wife, ex-wife. I corrected immediately. Something twinkled in Lucian's eyes as he nodded. Forgive me, ex-wife. Either way, I believe your identity and experiences could inspire many werewolves facing similar disadvantages. It was a kinder word than the ones I'd heard my whole life. Disability, problem, impairment. I snorted. I am not role model material. Lucian raised a brow. I'd say you've built quite a life for yourself and your son, even in light of your family's antagonism and recent divorce. It was slightly unsettling how much this stranger knew about me. The point is, Sarah, he said, I find you inspiring, and I know many others would, too. OTS is more than a relief organization. We also offer the tools every wolf needs. We can train you, make you strong in your own right, so you never have to rely on someone else to save you. I glanced down at the card in my hands, then back at Lucian. He smiled kindly. You don't have to decide right now. Take some time to think about it. I nodded slowly. That I could do. Thank you, I said softly. You already said that? I laughed softly. Yeah, but no one had ever asked me to belong to something. Even my pack and family, with whom belonging should have been automatic, hadn't wanted me. But here was Lucian, who'd sought me out, who wanted me to be a part of something. It sounded almost too good to be true. Well, Lucian said, pushing himself to his feet, I should get going. I stood too and walked him back to the door. I hope you say yes, he said as he opened the door. I think this will be really good for you. I smiled hesitantly. I'll consider it. He shot me one last smile before leaving. Sighing, I leaned against the door, staring at the contact card in my hands. Out of the shadows, I whispered. What would that be like, I wondered. If the organization was filled with wolfless wolves like me, I'd be among my kind, so to speak. Could it be possible? Could I find a community there? That night, I dreamed. In the dream, I stood in a sunlit clearing surrounded by faces I didn't recognize but felt I'd known forever. Laughter echoed, warm and unburdened. I was wearing gear, not fine dresses, and my body moved with a strength and grace I'd never possessed. Someone handed me a trophy. Cheers erupted, genuine and roaring. Then a tall figure stepped from the crowd. His features were blurred by the dream's brilliant light, a silhouette of broad shoulders and quiet strength. He pulled me into an embrace that felt like solid ground after years of falling. His lips brushed the corner of mine, a whisper of a kiss, sweet and fleeting. I always knew. You could do it, Serafina. The voice was deep, warm, resonant with pride. It felt familiar. I wanted to see his face clearly, but the next second, the recognition jolted me awake. My eyes flew open in the dark of my new bedroom, staring at the ceiling with my heart pounding against my ribs. Why him? I didn't understand. The dream, Kieran. Blackthorn. A wave of self-disgust washed over me. Pathetic. Hadn't a decade of his disdain, his cold neglect, been enough to fade into darkness that foolish part of me? He'd married me and kept me like a piece of furniture. He'd asked for a divorce the night I lost my father. He'd watched me humiliated at the memorial and done nothing. And in the woods, when death stared me down, I'd known with absolute certainty he wasn't coming for me. He'd been somewhere else with her, Celeste. Time to let go of the stupid obsession, Sarah. I scolded myself. Besides, maybe you only saw his face because he's the only man you've ever had. It was a brutal truth. Goddess, looking back, how did I endure being treated like garbage for so long? Mom? Daniel's voice pulled me from the toxic spiral. He stood at the foot of the stairs, rubbing his eyes. Sweetheart. I hurried over, my heart softening at the sight. His curls were sticking around every which way, and I gently ran a hand through them. Did I wake you? He shook his head. Your phone alarm for school. I glanced at the clock. 7 a.m. Right. I made your favorite pancakes. Come on. His eyes lit up, but then he pouted. I was supposed to take care of you. I kissed his temple. And you will after school. But for now, you need fuel to learn, deal. He relented, scampering off to the kitchen with a revived excitement. After dropping Daniel off, I returned home, showered, and sat at my desk. My right arm ached dully in its sling. My mind, cluttered with too much recent chaos, refused to settle into writing. I'm not sure how long I sat there before my gaze landed on Lucian's parting gift. The contact card lay on the side table, an invitation. I grabbed my phone and typed into the search bar, out of the shadows. The first result was a website, and when I clicked on it, I was bombarded with a slew of information. My curiosity was piqued as I read through. Founded 10 years ago, Otis had rapidly grown into something of a haven for werewolves like me. Wolfless, weak outcasts. There were pictures, a virtual facility tour, and testimonials from wolves who had benefited from the organization's generosity. Something ballooned up in me as I drank in all the information. Hope, a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in forever. So I copied the number on the card to my phone and sent out a message. Hi Lucian, it is Sarah. I've considered it. I'd love a tour sometime. Sad. When And finally, this is the sparring arena, Lucian said, waving his arm around the room with a flourish. Slowly, I spun, taking in the large, circular space. We were at the final spot on the tour of the OTS headquarters. We hadn't bothered with the administrative wing of the building. Boring numbers and papers. Nothing fun there, Lucian had said. Then he'd shown me the several training facilities they had. He showed me the core pit, a sunken arena with natural stone walls for climbing and leaping, as well as logs, builders, and weighted chains for resistance training. Then there was the Moon Hall, where the wolves who could shift practiced restraints and meditation techniques to help them control their powers. There was an intricate outdoor obstacle course with trees, rocks, and trenches, designed for both humans and wolves. There was even an underground den lined with moss, heated dens, and fire pits for resting, healing, and mental recovery. Overall, it was the most impressive building I'd ever been in, making Lucian Reed the most remarkable person I'd ever met for thinking to do this for a group of people that the world had written off. Like the general design of the OTS headquarters, the sparring arena was a sleek, open-air space reinforced with steel and obsidian. Lucian explained that the padded floor absorbed impact while embedded sensors tracked movement and force. He pointed out transparent barriers that rose around the perimeter, allowing spectators to watch without interfering. "Does that happen often?" I asked. Spectating. I imagined a roaring crowd, cheering people on as they fought to the death like gladiators. Lucian shrugged. "It is mainly to track progress for feedback." I exhaled. "This all so overwhelming." Lucian chuckled. "That is because you've never been in an actual training facility, have you?" He was right. I'd never trained before. My pack completely ostracized me for not having a wolf. Of course, I was never part of pack runs, and no one was willing to help me train in other aspects. "Is yours different?" I asked. He nodded. OTS has the largest training facility in Los Angeles, and since it is located in neutral territory, many wolves from other packs train here. Our trainers are equipped to teach even the most feeble werewolves. I swallowed tightly, feeling that hope rise higher. So, there would be someone willing to teach me. Lucian's smile was soft, kind. "I would teach you personally," I snorted, rolling my eyes. Lucian took a step forward, and my amusement faded as I craned my neck back to keep his gaze. "I am serious, Sarah," my eyebrows furrowed. "But why would you? You are an alpha. Don't you have more important things to do?" His lips twitched. "Important? Yes, more important." He shook his head. "Nope. Oh, I'd spent my whole life being the less important choice, so I was thrown a little off balance." "What do you say?" he asked. "Ready for your first lesson." I absent-mindedly rolled my left shoulder. It had been a week since the rogue intrusion, but my injury had healed nicely. The stitches were out, and other than the occasional annoying ache, I was as good as new, more or less. Training with Lucian would ensure I was never put in a vulnerable position where I could be injured again. "Yeah," I exhaled. "I am ready." Lucian Reed, the alpha who saved weak wolves and paid them home visits, was kind, gentle, and warm. Lucian Reed, the trainer, was a sadistic bastard. "Stop! Stop!" I panted, holding a hand out as my knees buckled, sending me to the floor. Lucian paced in front of me, his combat boots thudding against the padded floors of the private training room. The arena was for sparring, but OTS had hundreds of private training rooms, each divided by sliding one-way glass doors where one-on-one training took place. It was where Lucian had made me regret ever being born. "Get up!" "Serafina," Lucian said. His voice was unrecognizable, hard, merciless. "You have more fight in you." "No." I wheezed, my hands trembling as I doubled over and tried not to throw up. I don't. It had started with simple tasks, posture, stance, and how to make a proper fist. It had quickly escalated to suicidal drills, wall sits, burpees, bear crawls, push-ups, planks, and the absolute bound to bane of my existence. Controlled fall and recovery, which essentially required me to throw myself down on the mat and pop back up with the speed that made me breathless and nauseous. I felt Lucian crouch down before me, and I half panted, half growled. I swear, Lucian, if you make me... I looked up to see him smiling down at me. The murderous trainer mask dissolved. I expected you to tap out half an hour ago, he said, his voice dripping with pride. I am impressed, Sarah. I knew you had it in you. And even though Lucian was blurring at the edges, there was a suspicious ringing in my ears, and it felt like my heart was pounding in my belly. Pride flooded my veins. You suck, I panted. He tilted his head. So you don't want hot packs? My hands gave out, and I rolled, sprawling on my back. No, please. The workout clothes Lucian had supplied me were soaked through and through, and every muscle in me screamed in agony. But I'd never felt so elated. Lucian's face loomed over me, inverted, as he braced his hands on both sides of my head. This is just your first session, he said. Imagine how strong you'll be after several. I grinned, looking into his twinkling blue eyes. I imagined it, and a rush of adrenaline flooded me. The idea of not being weak, fragile, or useless. Thank you, I said, the words heartfelt. He offered a hand. I took it without hesitation, letting him pull me to my feet. My muscles still trembled, but it was a manageable ache. That's enough for your trial today, he said, giving me a genuine smile. There will be plenty of time to get acquainted once you're officially enrolled. I nodded, falling into step beside him as we left the training room. But my smile vanished the moment I recognized the figure approaching us down the hallway. Kieran. What was he doing here? The financials are solid, and their growth trajectory is impressive, Gavin, my beta, reported, sliding a tablet across my desk. The screen displayed the sleek logo of Out of the Shadows. They've expanded their operations into Lay last year, their model providing sanctuary and training for wolves without packs, omegas, the vulnerable. It's garnered significant support. I skimmed the report. A noble venture on the surface. Gavin's tone, however, held a note of subtle caution, and the catch. Their alpha, Lucian Reed. He's unconventional, operates outside traditional pack hierarchies. There are whispers he's poaching members from established packs by offering what they lack, acceptance. For those their own families shun. The name meant nothing to me, but the description ignited a cold familiar spark of irritation. The idea that inherent weaknesses could be so easily solved was naive. If it were that simple, Edward Lockwood, with all his resources and desperation to fix his flawed daughter, would have found a solution for Serafina years ago. Serafina. The thought of my ex-wife was a persistent, aggravating thorn lately. She hadn't reached out to anyone since that day at the hospital. Even matters concerning Daniel were handled via terse, efficient texts. She was actively erasing herself from our world. This is what you wanted, I reminded myself. A clean break. A clear path forward with Celeste, uncomplicated by the shadow of a marriage that should never have been. Yet, every night when I closed my eyes, my mind conjured the intrusion with horrifying clarity. I hadn't been there, but my alpha instincts supplied the details with cruel precision. Every primal instinct I possessed had roared to protect her. My ex-wife, my son's mother, the mate I'd never claimed. And I had been useless. Then another shadow had intervened. I should have been grateful to the stranger for tearing the rogue apart. I should have thanked the moon goddess that he'd reached her in time. Mine. My wolf Ashar snarled. Then I'd wake, heart hammering against my ribs in the vast silence of the Alpha Suite. That final word had to be a phantom, a relic of a strained bond. Sarah was never mine. For 10 years, I'd refused to mark her, refused to grant her the title of Luna, because we never belonged to each other. She was my wife by unfortunate accident, not by choice. Now, we were finally free. Celeste was back, willing to forgive the past and build a future. I couldn't jeopardize that, so why had seeing Sarah's icy, detached gaze in the hospital felt like a crack forming in my very foundation? Why did the dream image of another man's hands on her waist make me want to paint those bound to trees with his entrails? I dragged a hand down my face and stared out the window. The moon was waxing, nearing fullness. That's it. Now, we were divorced. I had no reason to drag Sarah back into that sordid dynamic. Said, Ho Guai. I'd ultimately taken Gavin's advice to visit the OTS headquarters in person. Their financials were indeed promising, and a potential alliance held merit. More pressingly, Ethan had confided his frustration over Celeste's training. A decade away from pack life had left her wolf weakened, and we couldn't risk a repeat of what happened to Sarah. Celeste found the idea of training in front of our pack members humiliating. So we decided to get her a special one. Stepping into the Ox complex, I had to admit the place had a distinct energy. It felt purposeful, almost healing. My only irritation was the absence of their Alpha Lucian Reed. My request for a meeting was met with a polite but firm deferral by a staff member. Alpha Reed is currently occupied with a precious guest. He extends his apologies. Gavin bristled beside me. The Nightfang pack was not accustomed to being put on hold. I eased his anger, dismissing it as a negotiating tactic, a play for perceived value. That detached curiosity evaporated the moment I saw her from the second-floor observation walkway. Sarah. This was a Serafina I had never seen. The guide's words about reinforced glass and kinetic sensors became a distant hum. My world narrowed to the room below. She held her own longer than I thought possible, but eventually her legs gave out, and she collapsed onto her back, exhausted. A strange relief washed over me, followed instantly by a surge of something far darker as the man leaned over her, his face close to hers, too close. His posture intimate. I was moving before I fully processed the action, leaving Gavin and the confused guide behind. The sterile hallway blurred as I strode towards the training room. I arrived just as they were leaving the room. They were both breathing hard, the air thick with the mingled scent of their sweat. To my raging senses, it smelled like claim. My wolf, Asher, snarled silently, every muscle coiling. Sarah. My voice came out harsher than I intended. She finally noticed me, her body going still. For a second, something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, perhaps a ghost of the old vulnerability. Then it was gone, replaced by that infuriating, newfound ice. She turned back to read with a casualness that felt like a slap. Thanks for the session. I'm going to hit the showers. So you're just going to pretend I don't exist now, Sarah? The words came out laced with a bitterness I didn't bother to conceal. Or is it that you don't want your new friend here to know I'm your ex-husband? Her eyes finally snapped to me, wide with incredulity. You mean the ex-husband who made it abundantly clear he wanted nothing to do with me? What I do is none of your business. Serafina. The man reached her hands. Hey now, he said, his tone calm but firm. Let's all just stay out of this, I growled, glaring at their joined hands. This is a family affair. No one needs you meddling, whoever the fuck you are. The man chuckled and took a step forward, standing next to Sarah. I am Alpha Lucian Reed of Shadowvale Pack and the president of the organization that owns this building we're standing in. I finally had an identity for this meddlesome stranger, and I didn't like it one bit. But if he thought his credentials were going to make me cower, he had another thing coming. Every male in here was a bound to Alpha. I assume you're the famous Alpha Kieran, the man said. My apologies for missing our meeting, but you shouldn't take it out on my guest. As you can see, Sarah is the precious appointment I had today. Hearing him use her name so familiarly made the anger on my skin feel twice as hot. But the true fury ignited when Sarah stepped forward, shielding him. Leave Lucian out of this, she said, her voice cold. I asked to come today. I had no idea about your business arrangements. If I'd known you'd be here, I might have reconsidered. The dismissal in her tone was a fresh insult. Do you even know him, Sarah? Running off to a stranger's territory alone? Did you learn nothing from the woods? If you don't value your own life, think of Daniel. Do you want him to lose his mother? The words were out, harsh and cruel, before I could stop them. I saw the immediate impact. Her eyes widened, the familiar flash of heartbreak I'd caused so many times flickering within them. Then her expression hardened, her gaze turning to shards of ice. How dare you? She whispered, the words sharp as blades. How dare you bring up that night? If it weren't for Lucian, I wouldn't be here at all. I saw the tears welling, but she refused to let them fall. Instead, she turned sharply to Lucian. I'm sorry. I have to go. Then, she was striding past me, heading for the exit, for the parking lot. Lucian moved to follow her. My feet felt rooted to the spot, heavy as stone. The ghost of her shattered expression hung in the air between us, and for the first time in a decade, I had no idea what to do next. I fled to the parking lot, hating the hot tears that streaked down my face. Kieran was unbelievable. He asked for the divorce. Why was he acting like a jealous husband who'd caught his wife in an affair? If he was here on business, he knew exactly what Otts was. Yet he'd painted me as some desperate, foolish woman throwing herself at a stranger. Had he considered, even for a second, the rumors he'd just ignited? How his public display of that kind of guess would fuel whispers if I ever did join Otts. Then again, he never cared. As long as the whispers didn't touch him, he never cared how many nights I cried myself to sleep. Maybe I shouldn't have come here at all. Then a firm, warm hand caught my arm. Sarah. Lucian's voice was surprisingly gentle. I tried to turn away, not wanting him to see the tears. The wolves he took in were strong, resilient souls. Not broken, fragile things like me. I'm sorry, Lucian. I didn't mean to cause a scene. My voice hitched. If this is too much trouble, Serafina. His tone shifted firm, but not unkind. He turned me to face him, his thumbs brushing the wetness from my cheeks. This isn't your fault. I invited you here so you'd have a place where you don't have to face that kind of treatment alone. Do I really belong here? The question was small, the voice of the girl who'd spent a lifetime being told she didn't. You absolutely do, Lucian said, a confident smile touching his lips. Think about your session today. You're far stronger than you believe. Don't let anyone else's issues define your worth, especially not an ex-husband with poor timing and worse manners. But Kieran, your business with him is in the very preliminary stages, and as the director of OTS, I have the right to decline partnerships with individuals who show disrespect to our members. We don't need the Nightfang pack. His gaze was steady, reassuring. Remember, Sarah, if you need anything, Sarah, and I mean absolutely anything, don't hesitate to reach out. I am here for you. My chest warmed. When was the last time I had someone in my corner the way Lucian was? I'll keep that in mind. Thank you, Lucian, I said. He beamed. I look forward to our next session. I groaned, my whole body protesting with me. Just let me fade into the darkness here and now, I groaned. My whole body protesting. Lucian laughed. Sudden. I found myself humming on the drive home, Lucian's words a steady, warm ember in my chest. It was the first genuinely good mood I'd had in. I couldn't remember how long. I stopped for groceries, then busied myself preparing dinner. The familiar routine a comforting anchor as I waited for Daniel to get home from school. All the confusion and tension of the day faded away when I heard the front door open and close, followed by the sound of rushing feet heading for the kitchen. Mom! I turned in time to catch his hug, but couldn't help wincing when he squeezed my middle, drawing a protest from my abused abs. He froze and pulled back immediately, looking at me in horror. Are you okay? He asked in alarm. Are you hurt? I shook my head vehemently. No, baby. Not hurt, just sore. He frowned. Why? I shrugged. Your mom had a training session today. His eyes lit up, like the kind Dad does. I smiled. Nothing that intense, not yet, at least. But, yes, the pride that shone in his eyes made every sore muscle worth it. That is amazing, Mom. I am proud of you. He beamed. I wish I could grow up faster so we could train together and I could protect you. Oh, baby! I pulled him to me again, and this time he was careful not to hold me too tightly. He truly was the greatest thing that had ever happened to me. I swore then and there that no matter how hard it was, no matter how much my weak body ached afterward, I would keep training. I would grow stronger and be the kind of mother my son could be proud of. A week later, the only thing keeping me from rescinding my vow was Daniel's proud smile every time I came home, bruised and aching. Every day after dropping Daniel off at school, I headed straight to OTS headquarters, where Lucian, the sadistic bastard, devised innovative new ways to make me hate my life. Today, however, was different. It was the day of Daniel's long-awaited school field trip, a special wilderness expedition for his biology observation group. He'd left that morning practically vibrating with excitement, vowing to earn the courage badge. You'll get it, my brave scout, I'd said, smoothing his hair. Just remember to listen to your guides and stick with your buddy. I will, Mom, and I'm gonna bring back something awesome for my observation log. His enthusiasm was contagious. To celebrate my little warrior, I'd canceled my training and driven to Sunny Meadows Farm, a pick-your-own-produce and livestock spot about 30 minutes out of town. Old Ben, the farmer, knew me by now. Back for another round with the poultry, Miss Sarah, he'd chuckled, his eyes crinkling. That big red's still giving you the slip. Today's the day, Ben, I declared, pulling on a pair of borrowed work gloves. Daniel's earning his badge, so I'm earning his dinner. It's going to be herb roasted with all the trimmings. Ben laughed, a warm, raspy sound. Well, you know the rules. She catches it, she buys it. Good luck, remember. Quick and decisive, they sense hesitation. I'd spent a good 20 minutes in a light-hearted, dusty pursuit, my focus entirely on outsmarting the wily chicken. I'd just managed to cleverly herd the bird into a corner near the feed bins, my heart pounding with a silly sense of triumph. Gotcha now, I murmured, slowly crouching, arms wide. That's when the aggressive, out-of-place snarl of a high-performance engine ripped through the farm's calm. A sleek, blush-pink sports car, a car worth more than Ben's entire property, screeched to a halt just beyond the wooden gate, kicking up a cloud of gravel dust. The chicken I'd been stalking let out a panicked squawk and darted between my legs, vanishing into a thicket. All around, the peaceful clucking erupted into avian chaos. My hands closed on empty air. I stumbled, catching myself on a fence post. Frustration, hot and immediate, washed over me. All that work! Hey! Ben called out from the porch of the farm stand, his friendly demeanor gone. Easy there. This is a farm, not a racetrack. I turned, my face flushed from exertion and now irritation. Dust smudged on my cheek, my hair a wild mess from the chase. I was ready to give the driver of that obnoxious car a piece of my mind. But the driver's door swung open with a precise, elegant click. A slender manicured hand emerged, followed by a leg sheathed in designer silk. Then, she unfolded herself from the low seat with the grace of a panther, effortless, poised, and completely out of place among the hay bales and roaming chickens. The breath froze in my lungs. All the frustration, all the silly triumph of the chase drained away, replaced by a cold, familiar dread. I didn't need to see the perfect golden waves of hair, the oversized sunglasses, or the flawlessly applied nude lipstick to know. Because even on my best days, I already paled in comparison to her. I didn't need to give her more of a leg up. Celeste. It took every ounce of dignity and self-respect I had not to cower and shrink under the cold disdain in Celeste's eyes as they roamed over my body, her glossy lips twisting in disgust. "Wow, Sarah," she sneered, shaking her head. "What the hell was I worried about?" she said almost to herself. I crossed my arms, a flimsy shield. "Why are you here, Celeste?" She cocked her head. "So hard to find these days, Sarah. How is life as a divorcee, by the way?" I clenched my jaw, fists tightening at my sides. I believe I was clear about us not needing to meet again. And I don't buy for a second that you drove all this way just to sneer and wrinkle your nose. What do you want? Her eyes swept over the chicken coop with palpable disgust. You really want to have this conversation here? Old Ben, watching from the porch, gave me a silent, questioning look. His weathered face etched with concern. I shook my head slightly. Celeste was fastidious. This rustic setting was its own punishment. She wouldn't last long. No need to drag Ben into our family ugliness. Without another word, I walked past her to the outdoor sink, methodically washing the dust and grime from my hands. "There's a gazebo by the orchard," I said flatly, not looking at her. "Wait for me there." Predictably, she wrinkled her nose again, but retreated toward the indicated path, picking her way through the grass as if it were contaminated. By the time I'd composed myself and joined her, she'd been seated for a while, sipping from a cup of tea Ben must have provided. She held it with her fingertips, as if it might stain. "Well?" I prompted, standing across from her. "Get on with it." She ignored my question, her gaze distant. "You know, I've often wondered about it," she mused, her voice deceptively light. I frowned. "Wondered what? How much did you with his brain that he lost all common sense?" I closed my eyes, breathing through my nose. I was so not in the bound to mood for this. "Goodbye, Celeste." I turned to leave, but Celeste moved with surprising speed, blocking my path. "Stay away from him," she hissed. I looked up at her. "Who?" "Kieran," she spat. "Who else?" I sighed. I was way too tired. "In case you didn't get the memo upon your return, Celeste, Kieran and I are divorced." "Surely, he mentioned that to you." I froze, waking up a little. "Excuse me." Celeste's face morphed into something ugly and vicious. "He came home unhappy the other day. Did you think I wouldn't check who he had met? That I wouldn't know you are still clinging to my man pathetically?" The sheer absurdity of her accusation left me momentarily speechless. Kieran had caused the scene, and somehow I was to blame. "He left you, Sarah," Celeste continued, each word a sharp-edged blade designed to cut. "He never wanted you 10 years ago, and he doesn't bound to want you now. Look at you and look at me." She stepped closer, and her jasmine perfume wrapped around me like a poisonous fog. "You are nothing, Serafina," she hissed. "Do you hear me? Nothing. You have no wolf, no job, and now no husband. You will never amount to anything. Your destiny is to sit on the sidelines forever and watch me rightfully take my place as Kieran's mate, his wife, his Luna." I'd be lying if I said those words of hers didn't sting me deeply. I'd spent a lifetime hearing these, wolfless, weak, unworthy, decades trying to outrun it. But after that night, I became a sinner forever, never deserving of any mercy. I'd groveled for scraps of their approval, played the obedience wife, swallowed all the accusations, even voluntarily walked away from my marriage, thinking distance might dull the ache. But none of it mattered. Here stood my sister, right before me, oozing that same venomous smile she'd worn when she'd accidentally exposed my lack of a wolf to the entire pack. Memory fragments burned behind my eyelids. Thine mother turning away as the pack youths tripped me into mud. Father's dismissive snort when I begged for training. Ethan's indifferent eyes when his friends cornered me in the woods. I squeezed my eyes shut. Years of fury, humiliation, and swallowed pain erupted in a single breath. When my eyes snapped open, I gave a dark smirk at her. "You are right," I said sweetly. "You are his dream woman." And yet, I let my smirk sharpen as I went in for the fade into darkness. For 10 years, it was my side he returned to every single night. Celeste, not yours. Our lives were woven together in ways you will never understand, no matter how hard you try. Tell me, do you truly think you can erase a decade of shared history? You don't know the secrets we shared or the silent promises of those long nights. You are a thief, Celeste seethed, her perfect porcelain features cracking as tears spilled down her face. How dare you? You stole those 10 years from us. The way she sobbed raw, ugly, childish, suddenly reminded me of her as a newborn. How she'd wailed until I rocked her to sleep in the nursery, her tiny fingers clutching mine, how I'd sneak her extra desserts when mother wasn't looking. There was a time I'd have burned the world for her. When did we become this? My heart clenched. What was I even doing? From the moment I signed the divorce papers, all I wanted was peace and distance. So why was I standing here, trading vicious blows with my sister over a man who never loved me? I sighed. The fight draining out of me as quickly as it had surged. Celeste, don't think your lies will work on me. Celeste scrubbed the tears from her face, her expression hardening back into venomous spite. If your marriage to Kieran was so perfect, Sarah, why did you only manage to produce one child in 10 years? The blow landed, with pinpoint accuracy, striking the deepest, most private wound. My breath hitched. The sneer returned to her face, triumphant. I thought so. She strode past me toward her ridiculous pink car, pausing to slide her sunglasses on with a flourish. You may only have Daniel, Sarah, but trust me, he will not be Kieran's only child. And my children with him will be the only ones worthy of being his heirs. And when that time comes, you'd better know your place. If you get in my way, well, don't say I didn't warn you. Her engine roared to life, as the car sped away in a cloud of dust and arrogance. I could feel my vision tinge with red. What did she mean by that cryptic threat? Why drag Daniel into this? I could endure their coldness, their neglect, even their insults toward me, but I would not let my son be thrust into that same arena of judgment and conditional love. I didn't care about him being Kieran's heir. I just wanted him safe, healthy, and happy. A desperate clawing, need to hear Daniel's voice seized me. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone and dialed the number for the secure watch he wore for emergencies. It rang and rang. He's just busy with his scout mission. I tried to soothe the rising panic. He's having fun, he's fine. But the icy dread in my gut grew, spreading through my veins. I finally gave in and called his homeroom teacher, Mrs. Blackthorne. Her voice was tense professional, but laced with an underlying alarm that stopped my heart. We were just about to contact you, Daniel. He seems to be missing. The scent of Seraphina's warmth, draining away still haunted me. I couldn't purge that scene. The second earlier she bloomed a great smile at Daniel's glove, and the dark bloom spreading across her chest. Right before my eyes, my heart stopped. This was no dream, no phantom fear. This was visceral, immediate, and it hollowed me out. Actions followed instinct, not logic. My hands were already pressing against the wound, her warmth draining away hot and slick against my palms. My wolf, Ashar, was a silent, frantic roar inside my head. In a blur of motion, I had her in my arms, her weight frighteningly limp. I barked orders through MindLink to Gavin, my voice a stranger's rough, stripped bare. Daniel's glove. Sector 7. Lead the search. Find my son. Then, my feet were already carrying me away from the woods. Away from the search for my child, toward my car. The rational part of my brain screamed, "Let Gavin take her. Send Lucian in. You stay, you find your heir." But a deeper, more savage part snarled in defiance. My hands wouldn't release her. The thought of another man, especially Lucian, carrying her, touching her while she was bleeding out, was unthinkable. An agony I wouldn't endure. Those 30 minutes to the hospital were the longest of my life. I ran every red light, the world outside the windshield a meaningless smear. The only sound was her ragged, wet breathing, each gasp a sharp words twisting in my gut. "Stay with me, Sarah," I heard myself growl, the words a desperate chant. "Do you hear me? Stay." For 2 hours, I paced the sterile fluorescent-lit hallway outside the surgery suite. Her warmth draining away had dried on my hands, a crackling, rust-brown map of my failure. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the bullet's impact. A call came through. "Gavin. We found him, Alpha. He is safe. Twisted ankle, scared, but unharmed. He is at your parents' asking for his mom." Relief for Daniel was a wave, but it crashed against the immovable rock of my dread. My son was safe. But his mother, I couldn't form a coherent response. A grunt of acknowledgement was all I could manage before ending the call. My gaze remained fixed on the relentless glowing red sign, "Surgery in progress." When the light finally snapped off, I was across the hallway in 3 strides. The surgeon emerged. Looking tired but calm. "Alpha Kieran," she began. "Will she live?" The question tore from me, stripped of all Alpha decorum. "She is stable." It was a through and through. A clean wound. It missed major arteries and her heart by a margin I'd call miraculous. There was significant tissue damage and warmth draining away loss, but the surgery was successful. The strength left my legs. I braced a hand against the cold wall. My head bowing. A sound escaped me, part sob, part shuddering exhale. "She is alive. Thank the moon." "She is alive." The surgeon's voice softened. "You can see her soon. She is in recovery," nodding. I finally looked at my hands. At Sarah's dried warmth draining away caked in the creases of my knuckles. The relief was swiftly drowned by a tsunami of guilt, sharp and corrosive. She was alive, but she'd been shot right in front of me. I was her alpha, had been her alpha for 10 years. I was supposed to sense threats to protect. I'd been focused on a child's glove, on my own frustration, while a sniper in the shadows had her in his sights. I'd failed her. Again, and I couldn't let it happen anymore. Holiday. Seraphina's point of view, consciousness, returned in layers of agony. My eyelids felt like they'd been superglued together. My mouth felt dry and sandpapery. There was an itch under my right foot that was driving me crazy. And, oh yeah, the god-awful, brain-fogging shadow of a pain that weighed on my chest. I woke up with a gasp, but that only tripled the pure agony radiating through my torso from where I'd been. Oh gods! I'd been bound to shit. Sarah? That voice, rough with exhaustion, thick with relief, tugged my attention sideways. It took monumental effort, but I turned my head just enough to see K. His name dissolved into a pained groan and a throbbing in my chest. That was not worth it. Hey, it is okay. His voice was a caress against my throbbing muscles, softer than I'd ever heard it. Kieran Blackthorne knelt beside my bed, my hand clutched between both of his. His lips brushed my knuckles, his exhales shuddering like he'd been drowning. Dark circles bruised his eyes. His hair stood in chaotic peaks, as if he'd spent days dragging fingers through it. He looked wrecked. "That is it," he murmured. "Thank you for waking up." The crack in those last words would have made my eyes widen, if they didn't weigh 1,000 pounds each. Between the bullet wound and Kieran's inexplicable bedside vigil, I wasn't sure which was more shocking. The door opened then, bringing in external chatter from the hospital corridor before it faded as the door closed. A man in a white coat smiled kindly at me from the doorway. He had a name tag on, but I couldn't read what it said. "Mrs. Blackthorne." He beamed at me. "Well done, huh, miss?" Once again, my tongue hadn't quite woken up, and I couldn't correct his mistake. "You were quite lucky, Serafina," the doctor said, adjusting his clipboard. "That silver bullet should have faded into darkness to you, but without a wolf's accelerated metabolism, the poison spread more slowly. What would have slaughtered a full warmth, draining away werewolf, merely severely wounded you." I mentally scoffed at the irony that the inhibition that had been a source of pain and ridicule my whole life had saved me. The doctor moved closer and began performing routine checks, flashing a light into my eyes, checking my warmth, draining away pressure and oxygen saturation, and performing a number of other procedures I was too tired to follow. "Everything looks good," he declared when he was done, and Kieran exhaled in relief. "The hard part's over," the doctor continued, "but your human biology means a longer recovery. No wolf healing for you." I managed a faint nod. I was alive by some miracle. No way was I going to shadow about the fact that it would take me a while to heal. The fog in my brain was beginning to clear slowly but surely, and the gravity of the situation fell heavily on me. Someone had shot me, with silver, while we were looking for Daniel. What did that mean? "Hey!" Kieran's hand enveloped mine, his thumb brushing my knuckles. "You are safe now. I am not going anywhere." His jaw clenched. "This won't happen again." I arched a brow. Why the sudden protectiveness? He gently, tenderly brushed my hair back from my forehead. "I am not letting my son grow up without his mother," he said tightly. A fleeting pang went through me at the mention of Daniel. How was he? Was he hurt? Did he know I was hurt? "Sarah!" Kieran's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. "That mind of yours is working overtime. Stop. Just rest. I am here." He shook his head. "I don't want you to worry about anything. Okay, just rest. I am here." Against all logic, against the terror of being hunted, his presence anchored me. For the first time in years, I didn't fear the dark, because the devil himself was keeping watch. I watched Sarah like a hawk, just watched the steady rise and fall of Sarah's chest like it held the secrets of the universe. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I fished it out with my other hand, not wanting to let go of Sarah's Daniel. "Dad, how's Mom? Is her vacation over yet?" I'd told him Sarah was away on an exclusive, immersive AUTH training retreat, a necessary lie to spare him guilt and fear. To my surprise, the usually intuitive boy hadn't pressed, or perhaps he'd chosen to buy my words. I glanced at Sarah's sleeping face. "She's getting better. You'll see her soon." The relief in his small sigh was palpable. "Okay. Tell her I'm being good for Grandma. I won't wander off again. Promise." I nodded. though he couldn't see it, and ended the call shortly after. Then, Sarah's phone on the side table rang. An unfamiliar name flashed on Sarah's screen. Elaine. I answered warily. Hello, how is my favorite wordsmith doing? A woman's cheerful voice cut me off. You ghosted me for 2 days. Writer's block. Look, I know divorce sucks. You could be in a mental slump, but you are newly single, girl. Go live a little, your readers need that sequel. That man never deserved you anyway. Had. I pulled the phone away from me, frowned at the name, and put it back. Ma'am, I think you have the wrong number. There was a pause, and then, isn't this Sarah's phone? Well, yes, but I am Elaine, her editor. Could you kindly give the phone to her? I was frowning so hard, I probably had a unibrow. Editor? Yeah, just as I've told you, she snapped. Who is this? Kieran, her huss. I caught myself in time. It was one thing to let the hospital staff believe we were still married. It was another to introduce myself that way. Her ex-husband. The temperature dropped. Ah, the divorced ex-husband. Why do you have her phone, lady? What do you mean by editor? A dry laugh. Oh, this is rich. She said you didn't know. Know what? That your ex-wife is a best-selling author? That she has sold 500,000 books worldwide under a pen name? My mouth fell open, and I glanced at Sarah sleeping peacefully, unaware of the bomb that had just been dropped on my head. She was an author? What the fuck? I'd vaguely wondered why she never asked for money, but I chalked it up to the fact that she subsisted off the Lockwood family funds and never thought of it twice. All those hours she'd spent locked in her room. She hadn't been hiding. She'd been writing, building a career for herself. Elaine's voice sharpened. Now that I've satisfied your curiosity, put Sarah on. She is unavailable. What does that mean? I exhaled. She is in the hospital. There was an incident. Elaine gasped. Oh, poor Sarah, is she okay? Can I come to see her? She will be. My grip tightened on the phone. But no visitors yet. Take care of her, Kieran. Elaine's tone held a warning. I looked at the woman who'd been my wife for 10 years. The woman I'd never truly known. I swallowed. Yeah, I will. After I hung up, I grabbed my phone and typed out Sarah's pen name into my Google search. My jaw dropped at the results. She went by only Serafina, neither Blackthorn nor Lockwood, and over the past decade, she'd published more than 10 books. A 4.6-star average. A devoted fan base. My breath left me in a rush, guilt curdling in my chest. I turned to look at her, sleeping soundly in the hospital bed. How isolated from me had she felt that she'd kept this part of her hidden. We'd shared a life, a child, and yet we'd truly been strangers all these years. The walls of the room suddenly felt too close, the air too thick. I needed to get out. Sighed. Serafina's point of view. I'd been wrong. When I clawed my way back to consciousness, the space beside my bed was empty. No brooding alpha. No Kieran. It was his beta, Gavin, who occupied the chair by my bedside. Without the formal title of Kieran's Luna, I'd never been included in official pack affairs. So, Gavin and I were, at best, nodding acquaintances. But I knew I could trust him. He was one of the few in the pack who'd never looked at me with pity or scorn. Daniel adored him. You are awake, Gavin noted, his movements efficient as he adjusted the bed to a more comfortable angle. I murmured my thanks, but my gaze kept drifting to the door. He seemed to read my thoughts. The alpha had to attend to some critical pack business. He has delayed it for 2 days already. I nodded, the gesture feeling heavy. What could I say? Kieran and I were divorced. I was never a priority when we were married. Was I supposed to hope he'd drop everything for me now? Daniel. My voice was a rusty croak. My boy must be terrified not seeing me for days. Gavin placed a cup of water with a straw within my reach. He is doing well with his grandparents, and we haven't told him about the shooting. He looked at me, apology in his eyes. I am sorry, we just thought. It is okay, I managed, lifting a hand to stop him. I understand. It is for the best. He'd blame himself. He nodded. An awkward silence settled over the room. Gavin and I truly weren't close. He cleared his throat. I can fetch Ethan. He rushed over as soon as we knew you were awake. No, I said, the refusal instinctive and sharp. My fingers tightened on the sheets. I couldn't forget the image of Ethan, eyes blazing with fury at the hospital after father's death, vowing to ruin whatever shred of happiness I had left. I doubted seeing him would aid my recovery. Understood, Gavin replied smoothly. Actually, there is another visitor waiting, Celeste. I felt every internal door slam shut instantly. Send her away. I hadn't forgotten her taunts at the farm, the way she'd so casually threatened my child's future. She'd probably be delighted if I never left this bed. But, before he could argue, the door swung open. A nurse peeking in. Miss Serafina, you have a friend here to see you. A tall figure stepped into view behind her, carrying a simple basket of fruit. My first genuine smile of the day broke through. Lucian. I shrugged my jacket on the moment the council meeting adjourned, already moving toward the hospital. My wolf was gnawing at my ribs. I'd been gone too long. I needed to be at Sarah's side. I promised her. The drive to the hospital was a blur of growling engines and worse scenarios. Had she woken in pain? Had she asked for me? I took the stairs 2 at a time, my pulse a frantic drumbeat in my ears, only to pull up short at the sight outside her door. Gavin, who I'd explicitly instructed to stay inside the room, was standing guard in the hallway. I told you to stay with her. He shrugged, unperturbed. She has a visitor. I frowned. Who? Lucian? Reed. My body moved before my mind could catch up, and I drew open the door to Sarah's room. The first thing that hit my ears was laughter, sweet and musical. Stop, Sarah was saying amidst fits of giggles. You are going to make me tear a stitch. I froze for a second, stunned by the look of pure joy on her face as she threw her head back against the pillows, giggling uncontrollably at whatever Lucian bound to read said. Then her eyes met mine across the room, and she froze too. And, like someone drawing blinds to keep the sun away, her entire expression shuddered. Her smile faded. What the hell?